All right, we're going to go ahead and get started today. Just one more time, if I can get folks to raise their hand. I want to make sure that you can hear me on your end of the conference. So if you can just raise your hand in the GoToWebinar panel that you can hear me, that would be excellent. So a few housekeeping rules before we get started here today. There are a handful of interactive places in the GoToWebinar panel. I want to point out that I've posted 4 different handouts which will be related to things that we go through today. Also be asking a couple of poll questions throughout, and there is a section for questions as well. So please don't be shy about asking questions. If you have something that comes to mind, typically means at least two or three other people are wondering the same thing. And I'll do my best to get those questions answered as we go along, and also make sure that I provide the feedback of those inquiries to the rest of the people on the call. So to make sure that you're in the right place, my name is Brian Weissman, and I am the EDU account manager for our company. And we're going to be talking about best practices for morning announcements, as well as other content. So who is SnapStream? We're about a 25 to 30 person entity. We're based in Houston, Texas, as you can see by the logo, but we have education customers from coast to coast and all sizes in between. So large public school districts, small one-campus private schools. We do also work with a variety of other industries, higher ed, government, entertainment. So we're a pretty diversified company, and we've been heavily focused on the K-12 marketplace for about 3 years now. So it's a bit of a spin-off of the origins of the company, which started about 15 years ago. An overview of what we'll be covering today, talking about the ways of the past and the ways of today and the future as it relates to morning announcements and other content distribution, best practices, ideas for different segments, some different tools that we recommend in terms of hardware and software, and lastly, how SnapStream can help. We'll be going through a handful of slides, and then we'll also take a look at the user interface on the SnapStream platform. I know that many of you are currently doing something in relation to video and content distribution, and many of you also are not. So just a pretty black and white question here. Initially, I'm going to launch a poll, and if you can go ahead and answer for me, that would be great, so I have an idea of what I'm working with. And just out of curiosity, as you're answering this question, if you can type into the questions section, this is just for my own information, but for those of you that are not doing anything, either not doing announcements at all or not doing video announcements, if it's just PA based, maybe if you could tell me why that is. Is it financial? Is it we don't have the manpower? Is it, we don't have the time or the space, etc.? I would just be curious to get that feedback. So if anybody's willing to chime in with that information, that would be great. All right, so moving along here, basically what was taking place in the past was, and is still to a degree today, is audio and PA-based announcements. Quite frankly, they can be a bit disconnected, a bit monotonous, and it is scalable, I suppose, to the degree that it's very centralized, and not a lot of infrastructure involved. But when you transition to the video-based announcements, which is what we're seeing more and more of, the big concept that I would draw attention to is engagement. Engagement in terms of end users, engagement in terms of people that are actually part of the production, and it really gives you a larger canvas and a more diverse array of options in which to communicate information out. So the idea of making the best use of your time while also accelerating that engagement and making the student body feel a part of the process is why we have seen a trending towards video-based announcements. So speaking of getting students involved, how do you do that? So one way is to create that cool factor. Create open positions on the team and advertise that this is either a continuing expansion of an existing program, or that we're starting up a production operation for whether it's a studio-based like extracurricular activity, or whether it might be an actual class. It takes on a different look and feel depending on the district or the school that you're talking about. Like I said, create the perception that it's cool to be on the announcement team. I can tell you that technology was very different back when I was in school, but I was part of a broadcast class. And I don't think it was a cool thing to do. It just happened to be that I had a genuine interest in this area. So, create that sense that you want to be involved with something like this. And one reason that you want to be involved is because the students truly will be involved. That in a lot of cases, it's run by the students as much as it is by teachers. So there's a variety of different ways in which students can contribute, and we'll talk about that momentarily. One is pretty straightforward, presenting. So it's the faces that people see on camera, the narration of maybe pre-recorded stories, etc. Then there's the behind the scenes part, the camera work, video editing, writing the content, directing, acting. As you can see, there's a wide variety of different roles, and they can be suited to everybody. So ideally, everybody gets to participate, and people learn through the process, what they're good at, what they might not be so good at, but they get a chance to be a part of the operation in all facets. And as I alluded to, rotate the responsibilities. So don't just have John and Susie in front of the camera for the entire semester. That is a little bit too limiting, not only to the people that are on camera, but to people that want to be. So rotating those roles is a great idea. And then once you've got your program up and running, get alumni to help out as well. So, many of the students are going to be your best resources for helping the younger students become acclimated with these roles, especially the more technical positions that involve, operating hardware. And as you can see, here's visual proof that there's all kinds of different roles for the kids. Obviously, it can be something very basic, or as these photos illustrate, the setup can be a little bit more complex, right? You can have an entire sound and mixing board. You can have a green screen. You can do the production in a stationary location, having a room that's specifically dedicated to the announcements, or you can do that in combination with going out and filming things around the campus. And what I've been most impressed with, I think, is not that this is just limited to the high school age group. We see morning announcements, in fact, being a big part of the daily routine at the elementary school level as much as at the high school level. And this really, builds up students' skill sets from a very young age. It's a really great way to provide that engagement and make them feel that they own something. So in terms of ideas for segments, obviously we've established it's a good idea to have announcements in the first place. And what is the content going to consist of? The segments allow you to, in doing video-based announcements, I certainly recommend switching things up and making different content a part of the episodes on a frequent basis, because that keeps things fresh. It allows you to explore different dynamics of what you do. And the segments, as you'll see here in some of the stuff that we've listed out, can very, very closely tie back into the curriculum and some of the things that you can point to, from starting announcements at the beginning of the day to them being integral to the curriculum throughout the rest of the school day. So first of all, use short and varied segments, as I mentioned. One of the things about the PA-based announcements is adults have a short attention span. Forget about students. And through video, video engages, but it should be done in a smart way, in which there's a variety of content, and it doesn't last particularly long. So that it always stays fresh and topical from the first minute of the broadcast to the last minute. Get feedback, and because this is really about making sure that it's productive, that you're connecting with the audience as much as it is about the production itself. So solicit feedback from the student body, from teachers. Find out what they like, what they don't like, and change that out based off of that feedback. So a quick summary of yesterday's news. Maybe you're talking about the results from some of the sporting events that happened with the school teams. A thought of the day. This could be tied in to different values, perhaps, that the school is focused on. Maybe there's different themes on a particular week or monthly basis, and those thoughts are tied back to that overall concept. From there, then teachers can take that and kind of play off of it after the broadcast ends to continue the momentum of what was discussed in the production. You can have a guest of the day. Whether this is, a student that is presenting some interesting story, whether it's a teacher, whether it's, somebody dressed up in costume, whatever the case may be. A word of the day, a math or science problem. It doesn't necessarily have to be a math or science problem, but one of the ideas is to create some sort of contest or competitive engagement, call to action, so that the audience is also doing something beyond just consuming that content. And then deserving praise. So this is a good way to acknowledge students that don't always get acknowledged, to promote inclusion of the student body. Maybe it is people that are regularly getting praise, but this is a way to kind of go outside the box and incorporate others into the action. Obviously, this is a big one, especially at the younger ages. Everybody wants their birthday acknowledged, and this is a great time and place to do so. And then lastly, maybe there's new books that you want to call attention to with a short description about it, how you can access the content. And these are just a small list of ideas for some things that we've come up with. So before we go any further, I do want to ask another poll question here. And this is around student engagement. I mentioned that we see a lot of engagement happening at the student level. In fact, a lot of them are pretty much running stuff on their own. And I'm curious what it looks like in your environment. And that's the same feedback I seem to be getting here, is that about 2/3 of respondents are saying that the overwhelming majority of the production is run by the students, which is fantastic. Hopefully when we get into how SnapStream can help, you'll see that on the distribution side of things, it's also very easy to fold that into your workflow. So let's talk about some tools that we recommend. Number one is the flexibility of being able to distribute content for live consumption as well as recording. Obviously, recording offers that flexibility to watch back on demand when not 100% of the audience is able to sync up with the stream at the time that it's actually airing. You can do that on iPads, assorted other tablets, with the camera as a starting point. There are a variety of different types of cameras. Obviously, you can spend a couple $100, and then you've got more complex cameras that may come with some editing software and things of that nature, and probably are going to last you a little bit longer. It's going to be a more durable appliance, but depending on what your budget allows for, any camera will do the trick. As you'll see when we kind of get into the distribution side of the solution and deployment, many times there's a couple of links to the actual end consumption. So having a super high definition video, while it's great, if you're going from maybe a teacher's device to a projector or something like that, the quality of it, as long as it's a reasonable quality, that should do the trick. In terms of video editing, there's all kinds of software that can be used, whether it's, once again, options that are free. You've got stuff like Adobe Cloud with a wide variety of different tools. that has a monthly subscription. And then you have kind of all-in-one bundled packages. I mentioned the TriCaster because it is a name that we see come up quite a bit. We don't have a specific partnership with TriCaster, but we've received a lot of very good feedback about the product. And it seems to be just a all-in-one, straight out of the box solution that's very versatile to accommodate the various things that most schools are trying to do with their broadcast program. And then the distribution side, that's where we come into play. So there's options that are web-based, and then there's a platform like SnapStream, which is contained directly to your internal network. No one's going out to the internet. It's much more controllable with permission settings and user groups. And the IP-based side of things is the way that many school systems are moving. So in addition to your own internal content, I just wanted to spend a minute to talk about other content that schools often distribute to the classroom, broadcast TV specifically. So broadcast TV creates real-life conversations and dialogue by bringing what's going on outside of the school building into the classroom and creating that synergy to propel further discussion beyond a textbook or a PowerPoint-based lecture. It provides entertainment, which leads into learning. Obviously, you have to filter and be selective with what you're pulling into the curriculum and how it integrates with what's being taught. But it's a way to spin up things that create, once again, engagement because it's relatable content for the students. Watching things improves listening skills, keeps the class up to date on current affairs, and also providing a visual explanation as well as verbally. There's been plenty of research done on how different individuals learn, and a combination of audible and visual is typically a sweet spot for everybody. This also encourages student collaboration and participation. So whether it's broadcast TV or any other type of videos, video assets get people talking, and that's immensely helpful to promoting learning amongst each other. So let's talk a little bit more about distributing announcements. We already kind of covered the old school way of doing things in terms of PA-based, but the old school way, even on the video side, was TVs on carts, TVs hanging from the corner of the classroom. Simply put, most of this infrastructure doesn't exist anymore. And if it does, it's not being used. And that's because of the scalability and how a lot of the infrastructure has been phased out. The cabling is not there, or it's not being added to renovated buildings or new campuses. And because of that, you're looking for something that takes away all that friction of getting content from point A to B, and that's the IPTV appliances of the world. So some of the others that you may or may not be familiar with are entities like Safari Montage, MediaCast, etc. So how does SnapStream work? SnapStream works by taking the content, whatever that content is, whether it's the History Channel or CNN, whether it's morning announcements or a DVD, or whether it is professional development, and ingesting that either into our server or by way of an encoder, then to the server, and dispersed out over the local network to any end destinations. So at a high level, basically the customer is responsible for whatever the content source is. It could be a variety of everything that you see on the left-hand side. And then that is accessible to any end users in a scalable fashion, simultaneously or on demand across a variety of different locations. If anybody has questions along the way, please don't hesitate to ask. I see a couple questions that have come up here, and I'll get to those momentarily. But if you have any questions along the way, please do ask. So talking about how it works a little bit further, I mentioned about the server and the encoder. So it's a combination of hardware and software, and the camera feed gets ingested into that small set-top box-like encoder, which either resides in a stationary location or can be transported on a cart around the campus. And then the server is the brains of the system, which handles the distribution and the storage of that content. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from those of you that signed up from the webinar about looking for something that's easy to use. And I can tell you that SnapStream, that is the core of our selling point, if you will, is in the EDU market, it has to be easy to use. It has to be a very smooth learning curve, and it just has to work. And in the evaluations that our customers always do, that's the ultimate decision maker. So you'll see when we jump into the interface that it just works, that it's very clean and very intuitive. I talked about recording as well as live previously, and as you can see on this screen, that can be done pretty much on any device and any type of browser. So there's no specific restrictions when it comes to where you can access it, which is great because various organizations have all kinds of different client devices that are deployed in ways that they want to consume it. Lastly, you can clip and share this content. So if there's clips, whether it be from broadcast TV or whether there's things that you want to clip out into smaller chunks from an internal broadcast that you're doing, you can easily do that with SnapStream, and then you can store it either on the server or you can integrate it with different LMSs or different destinations outside of the SnapStream ecosystem. Our announcements are really 3 easy steps. So once you've turned on the camera and it's plugged up into the encoder is going to acknowledge that the camera is on, and then through the software interface, that stream is going to be available. If you want to record something, you simply record it now, and you're live and ready to go. The last thing I want to mention is that you can also upload video assets. So if something is recorded and you want to archive it and make it available for later, but you're not doing the live step, you can upload any sort of video asset, whether it is in-service material, a class play, something going on in the auditorium, or anything in between. And then from a consumption standpoint, in the classroom, you typically see a teacher's device being connected to a smartboard or a projector. However, that's not the case in common areas. And in a common area, you could use the SnapStream set-top box, which is an accessory to the rest of the solution. This connects via HDMI to the back of a TV display, whether that be in the lobby, cafeteria, fitness center, what have you. And you can display recorded or live content that connects back to the server, either via the remote that's shown there or through a web interface. So from an office or some sort of central location, you can push out what you want displayed in each area. So before we move on, a couple of questions. I did get a question about accessing content off campus, and so 95% of the product is built to be accessed internal to your network. That's strategically how it's designed. There are a couple of ways to make it available externally, and I will go over those in just a second. So it's a yes and no question. There is a way to do it, but the primary focus of the product is internally. And then in terms of who can access it, we don't work on a licensing basis, so it's very scalable. As I said, can be scaled to any number of end users and any number of buildings. Just depending on what exactly the use case is would determine what type of hardware is necessary for the product to operate properly. So let's go ahead and move over into the product itself. And you can see that I have opened up a browser. I happen to be using Google Chrome, but it doesn't really matter if I was on Internet Explorer or Firefox. And I've typed in SnapEDU into this browser, and so that is talking to the local server that I'm working off of. Yours would be called something different, but it's the exact same process. So then when I come into the guide, I have a custom guide that has any number of different feeds. In the case of this guide, we've got 9 different feeds because I'm also feeding a variety of broadcast TV content, as well as that last channel 777, which is my internal feed. You can see, as indicated by the red icons, that any of the content, whether it's broadcast TV or internally, can be recorded. If I want to watch it live, I simply right-click into the box, click Watch Live TV, and it plays back seamlessly. So I'm going to drag over here from my other screen the video feed, and this is actually a camera feed of looking out of our conference room over the skyline on a very cloudy Houston day. Much the same as your camera would be, presenting whatever the students are talking about that morning, or whether it's the principal giving some type of talk, whatever the case may be. This is a camera feed being ingested to a single channel encoder and then distributed out over my network. The same would be the case with any sort of or any sort of broadcast TV content. And I also have options to record episodically, record particular time slots, or record everything on this channel. When I move over to the library, you see that there's the upload function right here. And so when I come in, it's very straightforward. I'm going to pick a media file, And when I select that, I can also select a destination that I want it to go to. So this folder could be called Morning Announcements, or Mr. Jones could have a folder, or Miss Williams could have a folder, or the science department could have a folder. Any number of different folders can be created with any amount of access to those folders based off of how user groups are set up. So when I access that folder over here, I'm going to come into Morning Announcements, and I'm going to go into my Morning Announcements. And now I'm in my announcements. And now I'm watching this back on demand. And I can view it at any point that I want to, so long as I have access to the system. Now I'm checking out what's going on in the world of sports for the school. You can see that there's a wrestling competition today, etc. By default, the content will remain on the system for as long as there is storage available. And our system comes included with a scalable amount of storage, so that's probably not an issue. However, if you only wanted things to remain on the system for a certain period of time, you can easily set up a workflow to say, I want to delete this content on a rolling basis of, 2 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever the case may be. There will be a recording of everything that I'm going over that you'll receive later this afternoon. So don't worry if you weren't able to catch all of this. There will be a way to watch it back, as well as share it with any colleagues. So regarding the question about access outside of the campus, the most likely avenue is going to be this YouTube tab right here. So if I come over to the admin section, and by the way, I'm signed in as an admin right now, so that's why I can see all of this access. When I sign in as a different user in just a second, you'll see that, a lot of that access I don't have anymore. So if I was a teacher or if I was a student, you could granularly select what each person has available to them. I can authenticate any type of platform that's listed here. So Vimeo or YouTube, for example, and then I can take content from SnapStream and post it out to there directly without having to give people access to the internet. So if you were to set up a school YouTube channel, then that would be made available to the outside. Under security settings, you see that we integrate with Active Directory and a few other systems. And so you can set up different users and different groups and provide the different credentials for those groups. This is what I was referring to in terms of customized functionality and customized access to different folders. So that when I log out and log back in, now you see that I only have the guide and the library. Obviously, I have no reason to see the admin section or, a variety of other pieces that only higher level personnel would need access to. Are there other questions about the system or about tips and tricks regarding doing morning announcements in general? If there are, please do rattle off those questions. We'd be happy to answer them. I've got a couple of more poll questions here. One is in regards to, what are you looking for in a solution? Is it in-house content to upload? Is it morning announcements? Is it broadcast TV, etc.? A pretty good assortment across the board. That gives me a good idea. And lastly, we do offer a proof of concept that's pretty straightforward. It entails getting hardware in your environment, seeing how it plays out, taking it for a test drive, so to speak. If you're interested in that, please respond accordingly. That would be great to know. There is a very simple form that I can send you. We typically do our POCs for about 30 days. We help with everything in terms of the configuration, working with you on getting it up and running, determining a good strategy for evaluation, etc. If you have other questions, there's my contact information. Very simple, brian@snapstream.com. My direct number. I will be reaching out to many of you to continue the conversation. And answering a few other questions here. So in terms of cost, the cost is all going to be a byproduct of the hardware itself. So our business model is there's a one-time upfront cost of the hardware, and then there's a annual software and support subscription that is 15% of the hardware cost. So it really depends on the scalability of your deployment. If you're talking about just one individual campus, the server you would be looking at a baseline point of 7,000, and the encoder would be 1,950. So that would be your upfront cost, and then the 15% support on that upfront cost. Our pricing can also be easily downloaded from the website, and I'm happy to talk with you about it further. One of the things in terms of scalability is that only one server is needed for any users or buildings that are connected to the same network, which is why many times you see that multiple schools or even an entire district utilize an IPTV solution like SnapStream, is because the server can be utilized and spread across multiple locations of the infrastructure. The encoder side of things would have to be specific to each building. But from a scale standpoint, that's something to keep in mind. I want to thank you all for joining this morning. And if you do have any other questions, like I said, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll be sending out a recording later on today, and we'll be in touch soon. Have a great rest of your Thursday.